Jackie Kennedy and high society elites' best kept secret. In 1953, Jacqueline Lee Bouvier married John Fitzgerald Kennedy in one of those weddings of the century that seemed to occur every few years. She was a 24-year-old former debutante who had been working for a Washington newspaper as an inquiry camera girl while prospecting for a husband. He was a freshman senator from Massachusetts with his eyes on the White House. But you know all that, and what ensued. You may even recall the pictures of Jackie's dress, one of the most photographed bridal gowns in history. According to Kennedy historians, the young Miss Bouvier had lobbied for something svelte and Parisian, but Joseph Kennedy, the groom's father and impresario, overruled her. He was wary of sending the wrong message: decadent, foreign glamour. The dress that Jackie got was a chaste confection of ivory silk taffeta with a portrait neckline, a daintily tucked bodice, and a parasol skirt appliqued with frilly rosettes. She wore it with regal aplomb, though her piqué may have simmered. In 1961, Mrs. Kennedy's first year in the White House, a writer who interviewed her for the Ladies' Home Journal reported that the gown had been made by a colored woman dressmaker and was not the haute couture. That colored woman dressmaker, Anne Lowe, was in fact a consummate couturier. For 2 months, Lowe and her team worked on creating the intricate design, but just 10 days before the wedding, disaster struck. Lowe's studio flooded and the bride's dress, along with all the bridesmaids' dresses, were completely ruined. Anne, understanding high society at this point, knew that this commission by the bride and her family had to be completed or she would lose her place as society's secret designer and most probably her entire business. Anne reordered the fabric and hired extra help, with the team working day and night to complete the gown in time. Lowe never revealed what happened to the bride or her family and absorbed the cost, which left her thousands of dollars out of profit. Lowe and the future First Lady went on to develop a close working relationship for many years to come. When Lowe began to lose both her eyesight and her business became affected, an anonymous benefactor stepped in to help financially. Anne always felt it was Mrs. Kennedy's and that she did so because she'd learned of the wedding dress disaster and Anne's integrity in righting the situation. Her work was admired by Christian Dior and by the legendary costumer Edith Head. Jackie's formidable mother, Janet Auchincloss, was a faithful client. Jackie and her sister Lee had both made their Newport debuts in a low dress. Marjorie Merriweather Post, the heiress and philanthropist Donald Trump brought from her the Mar-a-Lago estate, chose a silk foul robe de style, attributed to Lowe, for her portrait by an artist who had painted Queen Elizabeth. Olivia de Havilland accepted her first Oscar in a strapless Lowe number of aqua tulle lavished with hand-painted flowers. Jessica Regan, an associate curator at the Met Costume Institute, compares Lowe to Mabel Cher. She was a brilliant example of the American couture tradition, a sculptural designer whose work was a dialogue with the body of the woman who wore it. Lowe's evening and bridal wear were sold coast to coast in upscale department stores. She owned salons at several locations on Madison Avenue. In her heyday, the mid-50s, she claimed that she sold 1,000 gowns a year, grossing $300,000. Her math tends to be inflected by hyperbole. Each gown was an original that required hours of intensive labor. Balenciaga, by comparison, produced about 300 pieces of couture annually. From the 1920s through the 1960s, Loewe was the go-to designer for weddings and debutante balls for American blue bloods. Her customers included the DuPonts, Roosevelts, Post, Biddles, Rockefellers, Oceanklosses, and other families that were listed in the social register. They loved her work. She was known as high society's best kept secret because, of course, no one would admit their clothing was being designed by a Black woman. Ann Lowe was born in Clayton, Alabama in 1898. Her grandmother was an enslaved dressmaker who stitched frocks for her white owners and opened her own business after the Civil War. Little Ann learned to sew from both her grandmother and her mother. Even at age 6, it was clear that she was quite talented. She would gather the scraps from her mother's workroom and go to the garden and create these beautiful fabric flowers, says Elizabeth Way, a curatorial assistant at the museum at FIT, which has 3 Loewe dresses in its collections. When she was 16, Loewe took over the family business after her mother passed away and left an unfinished order of gowns for the governor's wife that needed to be finished. Around that time, Loewe also married an older man, Lee Cohen, and gave birth to a son, Arthur, but the union was short-lived. About a year into marriage, the wife of a Tampa business tycoon invited her to come to Florida and create dresses for her and her daughters to become a live-in seamstress. Loewe jumped at the opportunity. It was a chance to make all the lovely gowns I always dreamed of, Loewe told the Saturday Evening Post in 1964. I picked up my baby and got on that Tampa train. Cohen, who disapproved of her ambition, sent her divorce papers. Loewe, however, wanted to be more than a dressmaker. In 1917, at the age of 18, she took a sabbatical from her job in Tampa to enroll in a couture course in New York City. When she arrived, the head of the school was aghast that he had admitted a Black woman, and he tried to turn her away. Her white classmates refused to sit in the same room as her, but she plugged away, and Anne graduated early. 10 years later, Loewe moved to New York for good with $20,000 she had saved working in Florida and settled in Harlem with her son. She started taking jobs as an in-house seamstress at department stores like Saks Fifth Avenue and made-to-measure clothiers like Hattie Carnegie. It didn't take long for word of this young, talented artist to spread. She had excellent technique, says custom historian Margaret Powell, who was working on one of the kids' books about Loewe. Even the insides of her dresses are beautifully finished. Ann Loewe should be considered on the level of a couturier. It's rare that Americans warrant such a distinction, which indicates a specialized form of dressmaking, done primarily by hand, with rare materials. What is ultimately fascinating about Loewe's designs, in addition to the story of the woman behind them, is their very Americanness. They are glamorous, to be sure, but they share a triumphant sense of pragmatism, even in their embellishments. Vines of flowers twine over shoulders and across bodices with a naturalistic grace. Pale peach ostrich feathers are manipulated into delicate wisp, cinched with small cross-grain bows. Ann Loewe sculpted and scattered fabric flowers on her high society gowns for 60 years. beyond mere adornment, she took flowers as her reoccurring motif, and they're among the reasons she eventually, finally, won respect as a couturier. Between 1968 and 1972, Lowe opened and operated the Ann Lowe Original Shop on Madison Avenue until her retirement. At that time, she moved to Queens to live with Ruth Alexander, who formerly worked in Lowe's salon and whom she identified as her adopted daughter. On February 25, 1981, Ann Lowe passed away in Queens, New York. Ann Lowe will likely be best remembered for creating the 1953 wedding gown and bridal party dresses for Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy. Ann Lowe's designs went on to become one of the most iconic wedding dresses in history. Even though Lowe did not receive any public acknowledgement at the time, her life and work were an incomparable mix of tragedy, triumph, and perseverance that was balanced with an unmatched mastery of her craft. Her legacy as a couture designer of excellence paved the way for many other designers to establish themselves in the fashion world. She continuously invented and reinvented herself, even though she encountered many devastating obstacles, discrimination, financial challenges, loss of close family members, health problems, and people who took advantage of her kindness and lack of business acumen. While she was regarded as elite society's best-kept secret, Lowe was well known to those for whom it mattered, her clients and peers in the fashion world. On the surface, being noted as society's best-kept secret seemed to be a compliment to Lowe's skill level, breadth of success, and clientele. Through it all, she maintained her ambitions to manifest her choices, to work for families on America's social registry, and to establish salons that bore her name as the creative director of Ann Lowe Fashions. She lived a very quiet, serious life, but everyone says that she was very sweet, very patient. Around her family, she could be a funny person, and she was very determined, says Powell. She showed that an African American could be a major fashion designer. She made it to that highest level. She is an inspiration.
In the December issue of Saturday Evening Post, there's an article entitled Society's Best Kept Secret. This one right here. The article tells the story of a 65-year-old Ann Lowe, the only Negro woman to become a leading American dress designer. Now, Miss Lowe is here to tell us her story and also to show us some of her creations. Would you give her a nice welcome, please, Miss Ann Lowe? Yeah? We're delighted to have you here. Now, Ann, how about the title of this article, Society's Best Kept Secret? Why was it kept such a secret that you were around?
Well, I was introduced to society by a leading society woman, and I didn't mix my clientele. So many of the women, society women, allowed their daughters to come to my shop and feel safe. As Mrs. Dillon, the Undersecretary of State's wife, said I should never change my shop. Keep it that way always. She had two daughters that came always to my shop, Phyllis and Joan.
Yes. I think we should make it known now that this is the lady who made the wedding gown for Mrs. John F. Kennedy. She made her wedding gown. Ann's creations right now. Is the first model ready? Oh, do you want to tell about this, Ann, please?
It's a Deb dress.
This is a
And-
Deb dress?
Yes, and that's a little handmade shrug that she wears when it's not very cold. She put it on to get out to the taxi in.
Is that fur?
No, it's all
It
handmade.
feels like fur.
It isn't. It's taffeta.
Oh,
Taffeta.
And it's handmade.
Just like
I
fur.
shred every bit of it up by hand and do that. It's
It must take a great deal of time to do that, doesn't it?
I don't do anything.
Time, patience, and love. Mostly love.
Yes.
It is beautiful.
And could you tell us approximately what this dress, or exactly what this dress would be worth?
To my society girls, they'd give $450.
$450, which the rest of you people probably pay $1,000 for it. But those money people shop. Oh, this is elegant.
How
how
about?
lovely.
Oh, how elegant. Ooh.
Isn't that beautiful?
The color, Anne, is
Plum.
Plum.
Satin.
plum satin.
And the jewels, that's hand beaded. All
That's
the
hand beaded
jewels.
around the corners and the
no.
collar.
Down the front, the whole
Yeah.
front.
Oh.